of Woodworkers Guild of America. He's going to be here to answer your woodworking questions. Just a reminder, go ahead and type in your comments below here. And with that, we're going to get started.
Thanks, Krista, and thanks to all of you for tuning in. Here's what's going to happen. We are really going to make it our goal tonight to talk as fast as we possibly can. We really want to try to answer a lot of questions in the short time we have available. We did promise you that we were going to talk about products from AWFS, some cool new stuff I saw out there. We're going to do that at 1/4 after. We moved our broadcast back an hour so that we can help some of the people on the West Coast be available to watch. So Krista, if you have got a question for me, I've got an answer for you.
All right, yes. Jason asks, what is hide glue and in what application is it best used?
All right, hide glue is not hiding. Let's, if you can kind of come in toward the bench, Krista, let's just get on the bottle first and then we'll go from there. Hide glue is very much like the name suggests. Traditionally, it was made from animal hides. There's different forms of it. Today, you can buy it good to go in a bottle, just like this. You can also get it in, I want to say it's in flake form, but I'm not 100, don't hold me to that, in another form where you have to heat it in order to use it. So it's got to be in a pot. Real traditional application for this would be instrument making and also veneering. Big reason for that is it's reversible. When we apply a little bit of heat and moisture to hide glue, we can take everything apart. So over time, if somebody needed to do a repair on that cool guitar, they could heat the glue, get everything to come apart, do the repair, put it back together. Let me just squeeze a little out so you can get a feel for its consistency. It's about like honey. It is affected by the, get kind of a run test going on. It is affected by ambient temperature. It needs to be warm in the shop in order to use this. And of course, all glues like to be warm, but hide glue in particular is one that needs to be warm. All right, question number 1. Done. Got another one?
Yes, I sure do. Willie says, I am building a giant Adirondack chair with red oak. How dry should the moisture content be?
All right, so moisture content, generally we've got 2 things going on, kiln dried and air dried. Kiln dried wood is dried to usually about 6 to 8%. Air dried wood, 12 to 14% or so. For my projects, I really like to see stuff kiln dried at that 6 to 8% level. The reason is the drier the wood is when we start with it, the more stable it's going to be, the less prone to expansion, contraction, cupping, checking, all the changes that wood can go through. So Willie, I would suggest look for the kiln dried stuff, try to get it down to 6 to 8%.
All right, David would like to know, can you explain the measuring system for hardwood? He's confused on this measurement system.
All right, well, it is very confusing, David, you're not alone. The deal with hardwoods is that they're measured by what's called the board foot. So when your foot is really tired, no, here's what that means. Here's a perfect board foot. I'm coming right back. This is a perfect board foot. A perfect board foot is 1 inch thick, 12 inches by 12 inches. That's one board foot. The problem is that not everything that we cut is a perfect 1 by 12 by 12. So Chris is going to throw the calculation up on the screen if she hasn't already done so. But here's what we've got going, and yell at me if this is too glary. To calculate board feet.
Yes, it is. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, there you go. That's a bit better.
Thickness in inches times width in inches times length in inches. All of that divided by 144. So when you're calculating your board foot requirements for a project, this is the crunching that you have to do. There is software out there that'll help you do this. So if you just put in the part sizes, it'll give you the board foot total. Qualifier for this We can also do thickness in inches, width in inches, times length in feet. And then the denominator, the divisor, becomes 12 instead of 144. One of the things I also want to mention to you folks watching live right now, stuff like this, if it's coming by too fast, we archive this video, and you can always go back and watch it again, and again, and again, and again. So if things are scooting by too fast right now, once it's archived, you can press the pause button and pick this up. So board foot calculations are a very important part of your project. Something that's really important to remember is that we start with wood at its actual size, but it's sold at a plain size. So in other words, when you're doing your board foot calculations, if you're going to use 3/4, you want to use 1 inch for your thickness by 6 by 144, whatever it is. That way, after it goes through the planer, you'll have the right material on hand, allowing for what went up the dust chute when it was surfaced down to 3/4 of an inch. Okay.
All right. Our next question comes from Bob. It says, "Hi George, I am building a Murphy bed with
Sorry, I said hi Bob.
Oh, all right. I am building a Murphy bed with matching bookshelves. Is it best to wipe on the stain or spray it? Also, which would be better be a better sealer? Varnish, poly, lacquer, etc."
All right, so we've got 2 questions going. One is stain application, and the next is choice of top coat. Stain application, I love spray and stain when I've got a big project because it's so fast to get stain on that way. I've got a gun set aside that I only use for stains, and that's not imperative. If you clean it well, you can also use it for your top coats, but it's a convenience thing for me. A small scale project, I'll go ahead and wipe it on and do that staining by hand. When you spray it on, you are going to have to go back and wipe the excess off, but it's a very fast way to get a lot of stain on in a short amount of time. Something as big as a Murphy bed, I'd spray that stain. Top coat choice, there's a lot of it depends. If you've got a sprayer and you've got ventilation, I love lacquer as a top coat. It dries very quickly, so if you've got a dusty environment, the lacquer is less prone to being spoiled by that dust because it dries so fast. The varnishes, polyurethanes, they have a much longer flash time, so if stuff is slowly dropping out of the air, it's much more prone to stick to those finishes. So there's really a different strokes for different folks kind of an answer. Just because it's a Murphy bed, there's no one good finish for it. Finish of choice for me whenever I can use it is lacquer. All right, Krista, I'm ready if you is.
All right, and just a quick reminder, it's 8 after the hour.
Okay, and the reason Krista's reminding me of that is because at 1/4 after the hour is when we're going to go have a look at the new products.
All right. So Rob would like to know, how important is it to get woodworking tools level in his garage? He understands flat for reference surfaces like the joiner, table saw, workbench, etc. But does level matter? Or should tools be plumb like bandsaws or drill presses?
All right, so let's get on the level. And then from here, Krista, I'm going to head to the table saw. Give you a little warning. And this will be interesting. Rob, right, was the submitter on this question. So, Rob, in all honesty, I've been in this shop about 2.5 years. That's the first time I've ever put a level on my table saw, and as luck would have it, it's actually level. Are you kind of down on the bubble there, Krista, with the zoomerific? So, never having done this before, because I don't really care. This is a great question. I don't care if the tools are level, or by definition, when we check something vertically, that's plumb. I don't care if they're level or plumb. What I want to know in the case of a table saw is the blade perpendicular to the table? It has nothing to do with the entire tool being level. Now, there's a safety issue here. If they're so kittywampus that the material slides off of them, then that's a bad thing. But this concept is why, for instance, at the last live, I showed a digital angle gauge, and you can zero it out on the table, then put it on the blade to check for perpendicularity. And it's just, all you're doing is checking the relative between table and blade. It has nothing to do with the tools being level. So it's a great question. It's an astute question because the answer is no. We don't have to worry about that. Come with me. That's right, I'm just gonna hang this up. You can fire away.
All right. Justin would like to know, when you talk about double-sided tape, do you mean carpet tape or mounting tape, or is there a different kind of tape?
Yeah, yes. Yes to all of the above. Double-face tape, if you've been watching the videos, I use this stuff all of the time. There is a difference between the double-face tape that I get for woodworking and carpet tape like you might find at a home center. The double-face tape for woodworking is something that stores like Rockler, Woodcraft, online suppliers, probably Woodworker Supply, would have the kind of stuff that I'm looking for. Attribute here is I find that the stuff that the woodworking stores sell has got a little more body to it. It's a little bit thicker. The benefit to that is it's better able to make up the differences in surfaces, which of course wood has. Carpet tape, I have found, just doesn't work real well for my woodworking projects. It doesn't work anywhere near as well as purpose-specific woodworking double-face tape. So cost per square inch, maybe it's a little bit more than a standard carpet tape, but I think it's worth it because the bond from this stuff is amazing. I've known woodworkers who, in the right environment, will use this double-face tape to hold bowl blanks onto face plates to turn a bowl. That's how much grab this stuff has.
All right. We're going to do a short one so that we can make sure we have time to get over there.
Okay.
All right. Colin wants to know, apart from a router table, are there any alternatives for cutting dadoes if his table saw won't take a dado head?
All right. Yes. You can do this with a handheld router, and in a lot of cases it makes sense to bring the tool to the work instead of the work to the tool. Even if I can put a dado head in my table saw, there are occasions where something like the side of an entertainment center, 2 feet wide, 7 feet long, it's easier to do those dados here at the bench patio than it is to do them at the table saw. So a couple of jig options for you. Coming your way. I'll go right in the corner of the table here first so we can kind of stay. Oh, there we go. Here's what we want to do. We want to join that shelf to that side and do it here at the bench. One way we can do that is with this jig, and here's what we've got. There's a leaf that's hinged to the other component. This component, this part, is going to get clamped to your work. What the leaf does is locate this. So up here I've got some writing on this. It says dado on center, Porter cable 890. Here's what that means. It is on a Porter cable router, I figured out how far it is from the edge of the router to the center of the column. That distance is the width of this foldable piece. So the way I use this is I want the dado to be in some set location. Let me grab a pencil and we'll pretend here. I want the dado to be here, and then Krista, if you can zoom in on the plywood.
Whoops, wrong
Where the
direction.
line is. Okay?
Yeah, right there.
If that's where I want the center of my dado to be, the edge of that foldable leaf goes right on the pencil line, clamp the body of the jig in place, flip that out of the way, and then the base of the router is going to ride along that clamped component, and with a 1/2 or 5/8 or 3/4 or 23/32 bit in the router, it's going to cut centered on that line. That's one approach at the bench. Here's another one. This one's a little different. This one has got two movable components. I'm sorry, it moves on, it's adjustable on both ends is what I meant to say. I slip the jig up against my material, and what's happening on this end is that head is holding me perfectly perpendicular to the edge. So that head aligns me. The material that I'm going to route for, this is my shelf, goes in between the two leaves, squeeze them shut, reach underneath, clamp them in place with a wing nut. The key to this is that because I have squozed these two together, the distance between these is exactly the thickness of my plywood. Now you're going to need to be tight again, Krista. The cutting is done with what's called a pattern style router bit. There you go. With that pattern bit, the bearing is above the cutter. When I use this jig, this is in my router. It's a 5/8 bit, will work great for 3/4 inch stock. The bearing rides up against this part of the jig on my outbound pass. Of course, everything is clamped to my work. Rides against this side of the jig for my return pass. And because the ball bearing and the cutter are exactly the same diameter, it's going to leave behind a dado exactly the size of my material. So there are two router-based jigs you can use at the bench that will allow you to avoid using a dado head in the table saw. You know, it's interesting, I think, that in Europe, table saws are not allowed to take dado heads. There's legislation against that. So they must have a lot of practices like this that let them do this stuff at the bench.
Little technical difficulties there. All right.
Making a move?
Making a move.
All right, walk this way. It's new product time. We're going to head to this part of the shop. You know, and of course, what's cool about this too, Krista, is we're taking them to places they have never been before. I don't think we've ever done video on this side of the shop. I'm going to go to the drill press first. Are you with me?
Yep.
All right, so here's the dealio. Big show in Las Vegas, AWFS. Is every other year, is in, what are we in, odd years, is the AWFS show. So one of the things I look for out there are cool new products that I want to let you know about. These are a couple of those new products that I spotted in Vegas this year. This is a Rikon product. This is a Rikon drill press. And Krista, did you throw up the web page for them?
I sure can.
So you can go to their web page and find more information about this. Here's what I think is cool about this. Well, let me show you what's cool about this. Give us that tight shot we talked about earlier, Krista, so they can get the gee whiz effect here. Ready? Two things. That's the speed, so it's got a digital readout. Now, shut that off so you can hear me more better. Who changes the speed on a drill press? Nobody, because it's a pain. Unless you have one of these. So we've got digital readout. Then, with my hand on this handle, faster, slower. Here's what that means. You're actually going to change the speed on this machine because it's easy to do. Why change the speed? Real large diameter cutters, like big Forstner bits, need to run at a significantly lower RPM than small diameter bits. If you don't do the speed change, if you don't go from fast to slow, you're going to burn up that Forstner bit. If you leave it on slow all the time and you're drilling smaller holes, you're going to get icky holes in your cribbage board or cabinet carcass, wherever you're drilling those smaller holes, because the bit's not running fast enough. The other thing that amazes me on this thing is the length of the stroke. So now, yeah, I think if you go, there you go, Kristen. Look here at the amount of travel in that. That is a long, long stroke on the drill press, which is a valuable commodity because when you need those deep holes, you got to have a way to punch them. The other thing I like is they've done a good job of making the depth of hole adjustment really easy. I'm going to ask you to zoom one more time, Krista, right here up on this knurled knob, if you can get there.
Just 1 second.
There you go. So what's cool is it's got a quick release on it. And then once you get close, you can micro adjust it by turning it on the threads. So overview of the drill press. Going to go much more in depth with this tool in an upcoming product review. So we just wanted to give you the kind of the 50,000 foot view. The other thing that's real cool about Rikon is they are now handling record turning products. So this is this is a record 4-jaw chuck. Record, I think the second lathe I ever owned in my life was a record machine. And Rikon is now responsible. It's got the distribution or ship in the US for these record products. So it's going to be really cool to see what they do with that. Rikon's got a lot of turning tools, got a lot of lathes, so it's a great supplement for them. Now, in between tools here, I'm going to talk for a second about a tool that just didn't arrive on time. That is the True Track track saw. What I thought was so cool about this, honestly, was price point. It's going to be just under $100 for the track and the device that you use to mount it. And you're kicking up a lower third for him, Krista, True Track. What the True Track system does is the base goes on to your circ saw, and once it's on there, then of course we can use it for cutting plywood, cutting other sheet goods. So what True Track did with this model is they came up with a 57-inch track. It's long enough to cross-cut then a 48-inch wide sheet. And they did a lot of stuff to just make sure the price point was going to be inexpensive. It does not allow you to tilt your saw and cut bevels. 57-inch track cannot be joined to longer tracks, but it keeps it below that $100 price point, which is pretty darn cool. If you want to upgrade to other True Track products in the future, they've made the base such that it fits the other True Track stuff that does allow cutting bevels, that does allow cutting longer sheets. So you can in the future grow into those other products. So that saw track from True Track was another real cool thing that I spotted at AWFS. Now let's go from circ saws and cutting plywood to kind of the latest in overall technology, some of the latest stuff that's happening in woodworking, and that is CNC routing. This is Next Wave Automation's product. It's called a Piranha FX. Here's what caught my eye about this little baby. Benchtop CNCs have really been coming into the marketplace, becoming more and more popular. More and more people are doing this. What Next Wave did is they took this information and said, well, we've already got a computer moving this head around. What else could we do with that? Well, what if we put one of these in the 1/4-inch collet on the router? What is one of these? That's a 3D printer. What if we took the 3D printer out and put one of these in? That's a laser. So what's cool about this is they're taking an existing platform, they're taking their CNC platform, taking advantage of that in order to CNC and laser engrave and 3D print, all rolled into a package here. So Piranha FX, really cool, really neat advancement in the CNC world, and an award winner out at the AWFS show. So very cool stuff. Like I said, you're going to see more on that in upcoming videos. I'm going to sashay on back to the other end of the shed.
All right, and I'm just going to type in here a reminder that we're here live with George Vondriska, managing editor of WWGOA.com. Go on out to WWGOA.com, sign up for the newsletter if you haven't. I'll throw that up there for you right now. All right, and there's our web address right at the bottom of the screen for you. Again, WWGOA.com. Yep, there you go. And we're going to get back to the questions here. I know
Right.
Patrick has a question that he's dying to ask. Would it be safe to use a circular saw blade in a 10-inch table saw for resawing 3/4 stock in half? He does not have a bandsaw.
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, I use 7 1/4 and 8-inch circ saw blades and table saws all the time for a variety of reasons. So yeah, there's nothing wrong with doing that. Yeah, it's a short one. Yes, it's okay to do, is the answer.
All right. I have a question from Ed. He would like to know the difference, I believe, between adhesive versus glue.
I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's our first I don't know.
All right.
Ed, if you can expound a little further down the comments, Chris will grab it later and we'll come back to it. But yeah.
Okay. All right. We'll move along then. All right. Ken would like to know, is there a way to make black wood? He would like to make some wood inlays with black in them, but ebony and the like are expensive. Staining won't work because he will need to sand the inlay at some point. Is there a solution to this dilemma?
Okay. So here's what I'm going to suggest, but you're going to have to experiment with this because of the sanding aspect. You can do a process that's called ebonizing. And there's a table here. I'll go on the bench with it, Krista, and then what we'll want to see is, or are, the rails on the front of the table. So this table is made completely out of red oak. And this rail right here is the same material as here, and I think I misspoke. I think it's white oak, not red oak. This oak has been ebonized. Ebonizing is a process where you put steel wool in a jar of vinegar, you leave it sit for a long time, and you get out of that what's called iron acetate. When you put iron acetate on woods with a lot of tannins in them, they turn black. Now, where I was going with this before, my qualifier to this is I actually am not 100% sure how much penetration we get here. In other words, we have chemically reacted the iron acetate with the wood and turned it black. How deep does that go? How much sanding could I do before I start to take the black away? If you want to experiment with this, look on WWGOA.com, and in the upper right-hand corner of the website, there's a little search bar, and just put in there ebonizing wood, and we've got an article about this. I did in addition to this project, I did another project, and it walks you through the whole formula of working with the steel wool, working with the vinegar in order to produce the iron acetate. And then the other thing that's interesting, not every wood out there has tannins in it. So you can also look for a video on Woodworkers Guild that allows you to ebonize wood by adding tannins to it. It's pretty interesting. You can take maple and birch, which don't have a lot of natural tannins, and brush tea on them, which has a lot of tannins in it, then ebonize it. So there's a lot of stuff going on there. It's very, very cool to mess around with. But bottom line, search ebonizing wood on Woodworkers Guild, WWGOA.com, and you'll find the article and video.
All right. Roger would like to know, on an end grain cutting board, why can't the end grain part be sent through the planer to be made smooth? Also, can tight bond 2 and 3 be sent through the planer without damaging the knives?
Okay, let's do the second part first.
Okay.
Anytime you're gluing something together that's eventually going to go through the planer, if you've got big beads of glue on the surface, you want those to come off before you plane. So if it's an edge-to-edge glue up and you've got a seam with a lot of glue on it, you want to get that off. The reason is glue gets pretty hard and it can chip your knives. Taking it one step further, 2 and 3 are good choices for cutting boards. I like to use 3 because of its heat and water resistance, and it's also FDA approved. It's also food safe for a cutting board. Why can't we plane it? Well, this is a funny one because I know people who do plain end grain cutting boards and get away with it. The problem is if it goes badly, you can have shrapnel of wood flying all over the place. So my normal protocol is to say, never put end grain cutting boards through your plane. The reason is when we plane end grain, it's possible for the knives to catch on that end grain as it's going through. If they catch on it badly enough, you can shatter the material, and that's where it gets shrapnel-like and those chunks of wood start flying out the in-feed side. So the short answer here is it's just end grain is catchy, and if it catches as it's going through the planer, it can go real bad or real fast. So my advice is just don't do it, don't take the chance.
All right, thank you. So Chad just asked us, you made a comment about the speed in which the drill press should run due to the size of the bits when drilling holes. How does wood hardness play into this? Should he drill a larger hole in a harder wood faster or slower than he would a soft wood?
Slower would probably be the technically correct answer, Chad. But I think that there's probably, unless we're talking about like ironwood versus oak, maple, walnut, cherry, pine. Ironwood is a wood that grows around here and in northern Minnesota, and it is as hard as the name sounds. Harder the material, lower RPM we want to run on the cutter. But I think under most circumstances, if you take a given speed recommendation for a bit, if a 3-inch Forstner is suggested you run at 500 RPM, that could be pine, maple, walnut, cherry, cedar, are all going to be okay. Get into something exceptionally hard, maybe a little slower, but I don't think you have to tweak your speed species by species or characteristic by characteristic.
All right. Just a reminder, I'm here with George Vondriska, Managing Editor of Woodworkers Guild of America. Say hi, George. Make sure you check out our page at WWGOA.com. We're moving right along with the questions. Rand asks, could you please show us how you lay out and cut a Cabriole leg on a bandsaw? I realize this might be a little long.
Yes to the second part, no to the first part. Great question, but I have good news. Dave McKendrick is one of our contributing editors, and he has forgotten about more Cabriole legs than I have ever made. He has produced an entire class for us on cutting Cabriole legs. So if you go to WWGOA.com and go to shop, and then the menu drops down, and you go to classes, and you go there's a Cabriole leg class. And one of the things that's cool about Dave's approach is he did provide templates for 3 kind of standard size Cabriole legs, but he also start to finish goes through what he's looking for in the layout. How big should the knee be proportional to the foot, to the so if you want to do your own design, you can. Then he also goes through the compound cutting that's required on the table saw. So that's in the class section at WWGOA. And my reminder is, I mentioned this earlier when we were talking about board feet. If you're watching live and the information is coming fast and furious, hopefully it is, remember that we archived this video, and you can always go back and watch it later and hit the pause button to pick up on the nuances and the details.
Thank you. All right, Ken just asked, I may mess this question up.
Okay.
I'm just prefacing this.
It's got jargon in it?
Well,
you usually do pretty well, so you'll be all right.
Have you ever tried vacuum infusing for creating colored thicker, and then it says 3 seconds veneer? Does that make sense to you? Am I asking it wrong, probably?
Well, the good news for you is my answer is no, I've never tried it.
Okay.
So I think what people will do is, and I kind of thought it was a pressure thing, not a vacuum thing, but I don't know. But as a way to get material to deeply impregnate, to get a liquid to deeply impregnate into another material. For instance, pressure treated lumber. It goes in a chamber, the chemical preservative, the whole chamber is all pressurized, and that's what forces it to soak in. So no, it's not something I have ever done myself, nor have I ever worked with the material. So the easy out for you, Krista, is I can't answer the question. So it kind of doesn't matter what it says. We knew from the start I couldn't help.
All right. Okay. So Richard would like to know, on your videos, you talk about how to tune up and maintain your equipment. So far, he has seen all of the equipment as steel tops. Do you have any suggestions for people that have an aluminum topped equipment?
Yeah, and the answer is the same. So this will be a little tight shot on the bench. Let's do this in context. We'll put it on the table somewhere. This stuff is a woodworking specific lubricant, and hopefully we had that issue where things were reading backwards. Hopefully nobody's going to report to us that glide code is backwards here. This is a woodworking specific lubricant. Part of what that means is there's no silicone in this. The answers that I've provided for taking care of cast iron tops, like we have here on this table saw, are the same for aluminum. We don't have the issue of rust with aluminum tops, of course, but we do have the issue of lubricity. Want to make sure that your parts can slide easily. This stuff is available woodworking specialty stores. It's available on Amazon. Spray it on, let it dry, buff it out. It will make, I used the same stuff when I was working on a shopsmith all the time that had aluminum tables. I used products just like this on there. Again, not for the purpose of rust, but for the purpose of keeping the parts moving easily. So same answer as cast iron.
Thank you. Great. All right. So Yusuf would like to know, he is going to reface cabinets with plastic laminate and the substrate is 1/4-inch plywood. Should he use a backer so that the doors will not buckle?
Yes.
All right.
Plastic laminate, veneering, the general rule is whatever you do to, well, and really finishing also, whatever you do to one face, you should do to the other face to keep everything stable. If you only laminate one face of something or only veneer one face, there's a good chance you're going to introduce a bow to that thing over time. You don't have to use exactly the same laminate on the back. So if you're using a real cool, expensive, high pressure laminate on the front of the door, you could use just any other inexpensive laminate on the back of the door, just as long as the same action has been done. But yeah, always same thing when you're finishing. Top coat on the top of your table, you should also be putting the top coat on the bottom of the tabletop.
All right. And kind of on the same vein with cabinets, we just have a question from Charles. He would like to know, is it necessary when making a large cabinet door to include extra rails? And if so, how often?
All right, so I think here's where we're at, if I'm understanding Charles correctly. I'm going to do a little erasing and then you can yell at me if I'm not tipped the right way.
And while George is doing that, I'm just going to remind everybody that we're here live with George Vondriska, Managing Editor of Woodworkers Guild of America. And if you haven't done so, go out, sign up for our newsletter at WWGOA.com. Tell your friends, tell your family, follow us on Facebook and on Twitter.
I think on Facebook, we recently hit 125,000 likes. And I remember, oh, I don't know, it seems like not that many years ago, we were at about 600 and our goal for the year was to hit 2,000 or something like that. Back when Anya, who hopefully is watching, was first getting started. And I'm guilty of saying, Facebook, schmashbook, we don't need that. But Anya's a big proponent of social media and we're at 125,000, it's incredible. All right, I think to answer Charles' question, what he's talking about is if we've got, say, a standard upper or, you can yell out there.
Perfect, that's perfect.
Standard upper cabinet door or lower cabinet door, we can do that with rail styles and a pan. When you get to something like a pantry, a significantly longer door, we've still got stiles and our rails, but his question is, should we be breaking that up in the middle with another rail? And my answer is yes. And I'm going to say, as a line in the sand, somewhere around, well, if you're getting to be a 40-inch door tall, it's probably a good idea to break those panels in two and put a rail in the middle. And what I like to do is glue this up as one long panel. And then, in other words, my blank is long enough to make both of these. And then, right before I do the panel raising, cut it in two and raise the panels. And the reason is that then we've got grain that will flow continuously from the bottom panel into the top panel. And that's a very cool look. You gotta make sure you put the door together right once you've taken the time to do that. But when you get the grain to flow like that, it's very cool.
Okay, Charles just added here, the door will be over 100 inches tall and 26 inches wide.
Oh my God.
Big door.
That's a huge door. I would do it 100 inches tall, that's 8 feet and 4 inches, right? And what's the width? 27 inches?
26.
26 wide. I would make two doors, I think. I'd probably do two 50-inch doors with an intermediate rail. That's a really big panel, and I would be very afraid of it not staying flat for you. 26 inches wide, you're really at an extreme of where I would go with a single panel. I usually try to stay around 22 inches or so. So same thing there. If there's any chance at all of splitting that in two this way and doing two 13s instead of one 26, I think that would be more or better. But I'd for sure divide it into vertically.
All right. Here's a question I know you can answer, George. Michael asks, I have a beard and I would like recommendations for the best dust and vapor respirators others have found that work well with facial hair.
I can answer.
Because you used to have a full beard.
This is a problem. Let me show you guys this. Oh, wait, let's get the full effect. Can you get way back here to the corner? No, I'll come, never mind. I'll come here. Because we never want to take these things too seriously. Yeah. Luke, I am your father. Okay. This is a trend air shield, and even when I was fully bearded, this is what I wore, especially turning, which is such a dusty process. Here's the way that these things work. There's a blower inside here, battery operated, filters in the top as it. You want to see the back?
Yeah.
Okay. Filters in the top. What's happening when I put this on, it's not sealing tight against my face. There's a fabric down here. There's actually holes in the bottom. So this isn't a scuba mask. What happens is that when it runs, it's putting high pressure, it's putting clean air over my face such that dust can't come back in underneath it. This is, I don't believe it's a VOC thing. So in other words, this is a particulate helmet. It's not something you would be okay wearing when you're finishing. On the finishing side, when I've sprayed, I've always had good spray booth access. So I haven't worried about that because it's kind of a similar concept. If you're spraying into a booth and you're pulling clean air from behind you all the time, you don't have to worry as much about the mask. So I'd be interested to hear from others who still have their beards when they're wearing something for VOCs, how they seal that up around their face, and get a recommendation for Michael and others on VOC masks. But stuff like this for particulates, that's a Trend Air Shield Pro, is that particular product. Very good for particulates.
All right. Mike has a question. He says, in an old safety video, it's recommended to run the table saw blade at its maximum height, so the trajectory of the blade is down rather than back towards you. The theory is that this reduces kickbacks and makes it easier to push the wood through the cut. I was taught by George, is that you? Okay, maybe, to raise the blade such that the bottom of the gullet is in line with the top of the board being cut.
Sounds like something I've said.
Which method would you recommend and why?
Well, clearly the second one by George. But let's head for the table saw, Kristen, and explain why. I'm looking for some scrap and I can find a piece of wood. I'm going to run over here and unplug the saw. All right, this was Mike, right? Is that what you said?
Mike.
All right. So some video out there, probably on the worldwide interweb, says run the blade as high as you can. And can you get on the blade? Maybe.
Yep, I can.
Or so. There we go. And what they're thinking is that look at how when the blade is high up like this, as it exits the material, it's cutting in a downward direction. And we'll give you something to contrast this to in just a second. So to answer Mike's question, sort of here, is yes, when the blade is up real high, we do get this downward pressure rather than lateral pressure. Does this reduce the amount of kickback or the likelihood of kickback? Maybe. What I don't like is that we've now got 3 inches of blade sticking out of the saw when we're only cutting 3/4 of an inch worth of stock. The rule of thumb and thumb keeping of mine that Mike pointed out is bottom of the gullets even with the top of your material. The gullets on any blade are the valleys in between the teeth. I want the bottom of that valley even with the top of the material. Now, when you look at the blade here, technically it's correct that the blade is cutting in a more forward direction. So there's more cutting pressure toward me. Does that, or how much does that increase my likelihood of kickback? Negligibly, I think. I think that the safety gain of having less blade exposed is significantly greater than what we're going to get by cutting high instead of cutting low. The other thing with having the blade up in the table and cutting in such a stark downward direction is, especially in veneered material like this birch plywood, you're going to get more chipping on the bottom of the cut because we're exiting more aggressively down. In this position, we're exiting forward, so we're going to automatically get less chipping from our blades.
Great.
So this is where I want to be. Top of the gullets, even with the bottom of the gullets, even with the top of the material.
Okay, great. And speaking of that,
are we staying here?
Yeah, just for a second. So just in the vein of safety, we have a question. Yes, we have a question from Mark. He wants to purchase health and safety for the workshop videos, but he's having a hard time finding it. Can you please help him?
I can. I'm kind of a wreck about safety, and it in part comes from I'm actually trained to be a tech ed, a shop teacher. So this has been pounded into us all the time. I still have all 10 fingers. So it's a big deal to me. If you go on WWGOA.com and you search safety, so again, there's that little search window in the upper right-hand corner, and you just put safety in there. What you'll find is 2 pages, maybe 3, of matches for that. Table saw, bandsaw, drill press, router table, handheld router. We've covered a lot of stuff. We've made a point of all of those safety-related video clips being free. They're not behind the paywall. They're not for premium members only. So anybody can view those, whether they're a premium member or not. So have a look there and see what you find. A lot of information. And I just remembered, Chris, I meant to say this at the top of the hour. Our long distance record for the last live show was Brazil.
Or Australia.
Australia, I think Australia is further than Brazil. So if you're watching from afar, even if you don't have a question, I would love to just see in your comments where you're watching from. It amazes me that on the last one, we were reaching out to England, Brazil, Australia. That's pretty cool. So just put in the comments where you're at.
Great. We actually do have somebody who says hello from Mexico.
Hello from Mexico. Wonderful. Buenos noches.
All right.
Is it nighttime? It must be.
Yes. Yes. Todd has a question, and I might mess this one up too. What is the easiest way to keep larger carcasses? Is that right? Oh,
Carcasses.
all right. 2 feet by 4 feet squared while the glue dries.
Okay. We're going to go for a walk. Do you want to stay or go?
I could just grab it for you.
No, I think it's easier if I just run and get it. So
Well, we'll walk.
you talk, tell a joke, do something.
I don't have any jokes. Why don't we just,
Tell a Woodworking joke.
why don't we just follow George over here?
Well, then we'll come to this bench. We'll be in a completely new area of the shop again. All right, are we there? I'm having a hard time seeing.
Yep.
There we go. All right. I started using assembly squares not too long ago. If you want to kick up a lower third on the fly here, Krista. 3D square and Jevons, Jevons is the manufacturer.
Oops, you're gonna have to spell that again for me. Jevons. Okay.
Okay, so assembly square, this is a chunk of aluminum. It's been machined to be a perfect 90 degrees. It's aluminum, so glue won't stick to it. As I'm putting stuff together, cabinet carcasses, table frames, whatever it is, you can use a clamp to squeeze this against the side of the carcass. On a carcass, I would do one in the front, one in the back. So you probably need 8 of these or more. So you have 2 in each corner. Yeah?
Go ahead.
Okay. And because of the way they're made, they're holding the corner square for you while you put it together. They're also just kind of generally useful to clamp to stuff to help hold it in place while you're working with it. Alternatively, you can glue the whole carcass together, and then you can measure diagonals to see if it's square, tweak it. The more complex the project is, the more beneficial stuff like this becomes, because then you don't have to go back. As glue on corner number 1 is probably starting to cure while you're gluing corner number 6. So the more complex it is, the more beneficial these are, because then you know it's assembling square and you don't have to go back and mess with it later.
Okay, why don't we maybe stay right here? Because our next question is from Richard. He wants to know, is there a way of telling if different types of glues and adhesives are past their shelf life?
Oh, good segue. All right. Yes is the answer. CA glue, cyanoacrylate. What'll happen with CA glue, it's really a go, no-go thing. If it doesn't flow, don't use it. If it'll start to get in the bottle where it just gets hard, and obviously at that point it's no good anymore. Polyurethane glues are similar. Polyurethane glues cure by being exposed to moisture. They don't cure by drying. There has to be moisture present for these to dry. So if moisture has gotten into the bottle, and it could be just ambient humidity, then the glue will start to cure, it'll start to harden, and you won't be able to use it. With yellow glues, as a general rule, if it'll flow, let it go. So the only problem with coming over here, Krista, is I don't have a chunk of, we've got paper on the table. So let's get down on the table here. Here's what I mean by this. If you can clean the tip, there we go, and find that the glue comes out effectively, it's still going to be good to use. One of the things I've seen happen if glue gets too old or it freezes is when you do this kind of test and then cut that off, it'll be real stringy. It won't want to let that glue break. If that's happening, or if it gets a smell to it, I think it's almost like an old cabbage sort of a smell. It's probably gone bad and you shouldn't be using it. So a couple indicators for you there.
All right.
And I'll say this, how much does this cost relative to your time and material? If there's any question about the viability of the glue, don't use it. Throw it out and buy a new bottle. Because the last thing you need is the whole project falling apart. Which way, where are we going?
Let's go back here, and I'm gonna just, while you're walking, say we've had a couple shout outs. We've got New Zealand, Sydney, Australia, Colombia, Texas, and New York.
Well, Texas is like a different country.
That's exactly what the person said. It's like a different country, so.
And what was it? New Zealand, New York?
Sydney, Australia, Colombia, and, British Columbia, actually.
British Columbia.
And Colombia, two
And
different
Colombia.
places. All right.
So is it tomorrow in Sydney, Australia?
I don't have
Or
any
yesterday.
idea. I don't have any idea. All right. Stephanie would like to know,
What's our time left before
We
you
have-
ask the question?
we have 4 minutes, and I think
Okay.
you can answer this one in 4 minutes. Stephanie would like to know, where can she get easy to follow directions for making flat panel cabinet doors?
What? You're like, you pitch them and I'm gonna just knock them because we've got so much stuff on Woodworkers Guild of America. From bit selection to setting up rail and style cutters, horizontal panel razors, vertical panel razors, doing raised panels on a table saw through a cold cutting process. So WWGOA.com, and are you typing a lower third there, Krista? So I would search door making. You could also search panel raising. Lot of fodder on WWGOA for door making. We've done a lot of cabinet work, a lot of door work.
All right, great. And we have 3 minutes left. Do you?
Let's go by questions, not by time. We'll give.
Okay.
We did, our technology failed us
That's
last
true.
time, and we had to stop early. So if we
That's
need to-
true. All right.
A lot of questions are queued up. Let's go a little.
There are quite a few questions queued up. Chad would like to know, he wants to put in a good dust collection setup in his shop. Do you have any suggestions, or do you have almost tips? And by the way, it's almost noon in Sydney, I think tomorrow. Like noon on the 30th, maybe?
What day is it? It's Tuesday here. So
I
it's
think it's noon
so weird
Wednesday.
for me. It's noon Wednesday in Sydney.
Yeah.
Wow. I wonder if they had the blood moon in Sydney. So anyway, I digress. All right. So Chad wanted to know about
Dust collection.
tips for dust collection. Okay. Not brand specific, and here's what I would recommend. Tool buying advice in general. My advice is look at sources that have done objective tool reviews in the category that you're looking at. So the category could be defined by, I have this many dollars to spend, and I don't care if this is table saw, bandsaw, jointer, dust collectors. It could be, I have this much money to spend. It could be, I need to pull this many CFM, and I need a dust collector that'll satisfy that. And when you see these objective reviews, they brought these units in. We used to do this when I wrote for American Woodworker. We did this all the time. I did dozens of tool tests for them. All the units are in the shop. They set them up side by side. They run them through a bunch of tests, and they print the results. And I have great faith in these objective tool reviews. So step one is you got to check your shop out and see what you're really got to know what your CFM, that's cubic feet per minute, requirements are. Individual tools have individual demands. Table saw needs about 400 CFM. Bandsaw is a different number. Planers around 500. Are you going to run any of those tools at the same time? Because people are going to be working with you. That's a problem in my shop because we have more than one person working here sometimes. Or you're going to only work by yourself. How far do you have to pull it? Because the longer the run, the more drop you have in your flow. So then you need a bigger dust collector just to get the stuff to go that far. In the world of piping, spiral pipe is the where all be all. Let's just walk this way, Krista, because we have spiral pipe in the shop. Sorry, I took you by surprise. Still here, but we're gonna go this way. And just way up ahead, above my head here. This is spiral pipe. People will do dust collection with HVAC pipe, 24 gauge or so HVAC pipe. It is possible, depending on your setup, to collapse HVAC pipe. That being said, Don't start writing me letters. I know people do it all the time and it works. Spiral pipe is quite a bit stronger, and it really is purpose specific for HVAC. I'm sorry, for dust collection. And then look at this big elbow here. This is not a little HVAC elbow. This again is a dust collection specific elbow. It's a much slower turn. If you don't use HVAC specific parts, if you do use, I keep saying this wrong. If you don't use dust collection specific parts, in some cases, if you try to substitute HVAC stuff in, you'll introduce turbulence to the system, and that again will lower your effectiveness. If this corner is too short, then we're making it difficult for the air to get around it. So my tip would be add up your CFM requirements for the shop to figure out how big a unit you got to have. And then also it pays to pay. It pays to use the right tool for the job, which means the right connections for your dust collection system to make sure that you're getting optimal efficiency of the dust collection.
Okay. I just want you to know it is 3 p.m. in New Zealand on Wednesday.
3 p.m. Wednesday.
Yep.
And where in, if you're willing to say where in New Zealand, it would just be interesting to know.
Okay.
Like what city are you close to?
And would you like to do a few more questions?
Let's give them a couple more because
Okay.
we did fall short.
Okay. So Robert would like to know, how long do you need to leave the clamp on a joint to let yellow glue dry?
If I need clamps for something else, I will remove clamps in 20 minutes. I won't work with that piece. It's not ready to go through the planer, but I would defy you to try to break those pieces apart if it's good joinery after 20 minutes. I'll set the piece aside, maybe start another glue up with those clamps. In terms of certainly anything that's going to get turned on a lathe, it's definitely going to dry overnight. And as a good general rule, when you're talking about sending stuff through a planer or something, it's a good idea to let it fully cure overnight. But as far as pulling the clamps off to free them up for another job, 20, 30 minutes is good. Dependent upon local temperature, local humidity, yellow glue dries by evaporation. More humid it is, the slower it'll dry. The colder it is, the slower it'll dry.
Great. So with that, we have a question from earlier this evening from Erdine, and he wanted to know what is the best glue to use in a desert area?
Or did he mean dessert?
Well,
He
desert.
wants to put some cherry pie back together.
I think a desert
In
area.
a desert area. So yellow glue dries by evaporation. So I think you're still going to be okay with yellow glue, but you probably got to work faster. And let me think a second. Yeah, I think I would still stick with yellow glue for that. And one of the things to consider would possibly be white glue. The reason being, white glue has a longer tack time than yellow glue, but still dries by evaporation. From a strength perspective and a working with it perspective, the white glue will give you longer open time, more time to work with parts in any circumstance, not just the desert. But yeah, you'd be fine. You'd be fine with yellow glue.
And our friend in New Zealand is in Westport, close to Nelson or Christchurch.
Christchurch. I've been in Christchurch. I stayed at, I think it was it used to be the St. Joseph's Hotel or something. It was turned into a hostel in Christchurch when I was there. Okay.
All right, and this is the last question I have here. Again, it's from Erdine. He is wanting to know, how hard is it to change the knives on the Delta surface sander?
Well, a sander wouldn't have knives, so we have a disconnect here somewhere. And it depends on which, so let's say, presumably we're talking about a Delta planer. Depends on which planer. On the benchtop planers, everybody's gone to this sort of insert tooling where the knives come out, the knives go in. There are pins that only allow the knives to go in one way. So once they're in and they're tight, you're done. On the bigger, like stationary planers, they usually come with a knife setting device that is kind of U-shaped, and it bridges the planer head. The knife comes up using the jack screws until it kisses the bottom of that bridge. Then you tighten the gibs to hold it in place. So it's more complex on any, not just Delta, any stationary planer is generally more complex to set knives on than the benchtop planers. But with a little bit of patience, and you do want to pay attention to make sure all the knives are correctly set and set the same. So if it's a 3-knife cutter head, you don't have one at a time doing all the work. You just need to be real patient and take your time, and it's not bad. Let's probably do, what time now?
9:05.
9:05. So we're gonna do 5 more minutes. So we have a 5-minute warning on questions. Crickets.
Okay.
We got crickets.
No, I have got a question from Rassi. He would like to know, is a domino and biscuit joining as strong as mortise and tenon joints?
Domino, yes. Biscuit, no. So here's the deal. Let me do a little erasing again. I should have brought a paper towel or a rag over here. Okay. On a mortise and tenon joint, we really only are worried about the tenon right now.
Yeah, you're gonna have to definitely.
Yeah, I'm gonna do my drawing first.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay. So there's a tenon on the end of a rail. One of the things that we get out of this is a lot of penetration into the mating leg. So keep this picture in your head. General rule of thumb for mortise and tenon is that the tenon is 1/3 the thickness of the material and twice its length is twice its thickness. So in 3/4 inch stock, we'd have a 1/4 inch thick tenon that is 1/2 inch long. This is 1/3 of this. This is 2 times this. So biscuit versus domino. Let's get you here on the bench, Krista. Can you, will a little more contrast help you?
Nope, I can see him just fine.
Okay. Biscuit, domino. So one of the benefits to the domino is it really does duplicate traditional mortise and tenon joinery very well because of the penetration that we get from the domino. So with this, when we cut this, half of this is going to go into one component, half's going to go into the other component. So this is about 2 inches long. We're going to get about 1 inch of penetration into each piece. With a biscuit, this is the biggest biscuit you can get. It's a number 20. And when you look at this, we're only going to get half that biscuit's worth of penetration into each of the 2 mating pieces. So for something like a chair, I'd have no issue, no qualms about doing mortise and tenon joinery or dominoes, or beadlock is another joinery product for rigidity and strength on a chair. I'd be a little squeamish about biscuits because we just don't have that depth of penetration from biscuits that we have from dominoes, beadlock, mortise and tenon, or dowels.
All right, thank you very much.
Okay, what are you saying?
What am I saying?
Yeah.
Well, that was your 5 minutes.
Oh, that was your 5 minutes.
This is my like wrapping.
Okay. Wrap it, then. Stretch. No, wrap it up. All right. Well, thanks very much, folks, for tuning in. And I am astounded by the overseas viewers that we have. I think that is really cool to hear. Remember, I've said it a couple times, if things came by too quickly, that you can look at the archived form of this video and you can go back and pick up the nuances, the details. And for the Rikon drill press, the Next Wave Automation Piranha FX, for the True Track track system, watch for more information coming from us, more product review information coming your way on those. Any closing comments, smart aleck comments from you, Krista, before we go?
Me? Smart Alex? No.
Yes, it's been known to happen.
Nope.
Then I think just give them the ever famous W to close us out, and we'll see you next time.
Oh, I closed them out. Oops. Okay, bye everybody.